chase you by the pale moonlight.
Jesus Christ on the cross. I heard you were dead.
Been hearing that a lot.
Drive your son like a railroad spur.
So, Mafia III is set in a very turbulent and dark time in US history. Can you tell us a little bit about how the concept of the story came about?
Yeah, we're set in the 60s, which is a continuation from Mafia I and Mafia II. We're going from the 30s to the 40s to the 50s. So, yeah, 60s is one of these moments in American history. It's pretty much where America lost its innocence, right? Between JFK assassination, moon landing, but, like racial segregation, Vietnam War, and so on. It's this really interesting, time period. We're set in New Bordeaux, which is our version of New Orleans. We pretty much took all of the good things about New Orleans, and there are many, and put that into our own version of it. And it's a city that's controlled by the Italian mob. It's this guy called Sal Marcano. He's modeled after a real-life crime boss called Carlos Marcello, who was controlling New Orleans for decades and decades. He might actually have been the guy who ordered the JFK assassination. So there's a lot of rich history right there. But so Sal Marcano in our story is very much controlling the city. He's the only mafioso in town. And he has dealings with a whole bunch of other smaller marginalized groups like the black mob. So the character you're playing in this game, Lincoln Clay, he was an orphan who grew up in the city. He's half black. He doesn't know. He never actually met his family. He falls in with that black mob. Decides to go to Vietnam, tries to kind of get out of the life, serves in Vietnam, becomes special ops actually, working with a CIA operative. But when he comes back just at the time when the black mob gets betrayed and left for dead by the Italian mob. And there's a whole bunch of background and a whole bunch of motivation why the Italians are actually doing that. Lincoln actually survives, and he swears himself not just to take revenge, but to systematically dismantle Marcano's operation and building out his own crime family out of that. So we're going to show you in the beginning of the game of exactly how this fallout happens, but then it's really all about taking down Marcano and building up your own empire.
Awesome. And during the presentation that we've just seen, there was a lot of things around choice in the game. Can you elaborate on that any more for us about the choices that the player may face as they play Mafia 3? Yeah.
So our studio motto is every player story is unique. We want to tell really strong stories. I think that's something that Mafia is really good at. It has a really good cinematic presentation, and we're telling a really strong story. At the same time, we want to make sure players actually find themselves in the story. So at the very bottom, the core gameplay level, we want to make sure you can sneak, you can stalk, you can assault, choose your play style whichever way you want to. But when it comes to the bigger story, and to make sure you find yourself in that as well. So the way you're actually taking over the city is by allying yourself with 3 underbosses. These are marginalized other groups who have been waiting for their chance. None of them like each other very much. They might be loyal to you, but they don't necessarily like you either. But that's one of the talents that Lincoln really has, bringing those guys together and convincing them, we should work together here. The only way you can do it, though, is to promise them territory and tell them, you're actually going to get a piece of the cake. You're actually going to get what you've been longing for such a long time. So you're promising them control of the city. So as you are going after Marcano, you're slowly taking over district after district, and you're taking over his criminal operations, and his rackets, make them your own. You're then assigning them to one of your 3 underbosses. You're doing this in the sit-down, where you gather in this villa in the swamps, and everybody gets together, and you got to make sure you keep everybody happy because he made that promise. And it can go all the way to people feeling marginalized, people feeling like you're ignoring them, and at some point they're just going to have enough, and they might even betray you and leave the family, and then you have to deal with them.
And say, for example, if they do betray you, how does that play out for the player from there?
Those guys, so whoever betrays you, we actually show one version of that in the demo here, where Burke didn't get anything and decides, I've had enough. They're going to leave the family. You're going to probably have to deal with them because they're going to send their forces after you. The way that a big part of the upgrade system, or the way which you grow in power, works in this game is very much tied to these underbosses. Because as they are growing in power, their ability to undermine the city and bribe people and gain associates that can help you grows. So saw today how you can get muscle in, but you might also be able to get a local ally, an ally at the police department, and call the police off. If you just know who to bribe enough, you could call somebody at the phone company and make sure the dispatcher doesn't actually connect calls when somebody's trying to call the cops and those kind of things. So these are all things that each of these underbosses individually can unlock for you. That's why you're kind of enticed to choose this guy over that guy, and we're not making that choice easier. And of course, you're going to lose any additional upgrades there as well. So you are actually able in this game to keep everybody happy. You'll have to be diplomatic. You got to maybe put some extra work into it. It's totally possible. But if you don't want to, if you'd rather see the world burn, or you really care about one guy who you still want to have with you at the end, you can totally favor that guy as well. And at that point, yes, the other two guys will probably be dead at the end.
And the map itself, I must admit, during the gameplay demo that we saw, the map was absolutely massive and obviously made up of very different districts. Do you have a favourite kind of district within the game itself?
There's 9 districts and the bayou, so the swamp around it. I obviously love the French Ward just because it's so iconic and it so represents New Orleans or New Bordeaux. I really like Delray Hollow, which I think we showed today as well. So this is the kind of poor black neighborhood right there. It has a lot of spirit. Like this is where Lincoln grew up before he went to Vietnam. That's where the black mob was operating. It's actually where Cassandra is from as well. And yeah, there's just a lot of spirit. And New Orleans is this really joyous city. There's something really cool about it, like, you know, between Mardi Gras and Second Lines and that kind of stuff. I think you see it in that district.
Awesome. And I think that certainly from some of the earlier trailers I saw, and obviously you've recently released the new E3 trailer, does that whole thing with feeding people to alligators, is that something you can do on like a regular basis?
There are the swamps, so that means we have alligators. If you swim around, you got to be careful because, yes, you're going to get attacked and they might kill you. If you find a body, you take somebody out and you throw them into the water, and then, yes, you've created alligator bait. So that's a good way of actually disposing of bodies.
Yeah. While Mafia 3 is its own game, what would you say the other previous Mafia titles, what kind of influence would you say that they've had on it?
It's a continuation of the series. So, like, as a new developer, we very much looked at what we really liked about Mafia. So, I think the continuation you're going to find beyond this actual story parallels, right? Like, Vito is in this game, and we can actually explain what happened to him over the last decade and what happened after the end of Mafia 2, which is something he's interested in finding out as well. And, you know, Empire Bay exists in our game. The Commission actually exists. Just purely when it comes to virtues, though, we want to make sure that this really strong storytelling, the cinematic nature of the game is still very much there. We've just then taken that to the next step, and we've added like a full open world game on top of it.
For a player that's new to the franchise, would they have to go back and play the others, or like you've said there, it kind of tells you what's kind of happened in the previous titles?
You don't have to do your homework. I very much encourage people to do it. Like, both games are available on Steam, so, you know, if you don't want to wait, especially especially if you want to know about Vito. I know there's a lot of people out there really excited about like getting Vito back, and if you want to see a story that's out there, it is a completely conclusive story, and we're putting a lot of legwork into making sure you actually understand the characters, you understand how everything is connected, and you even understand why this fallout between the different mobs happens. So it's a standalone game. You don't have to play anything else, but if you want to, yeah, I'd certainly encourage you to. Awesome.
And as a designer at Hangar 13, how's that been in terms of, I imagine it's a pretty colossal task to do?
Yeah, it's been really cool because we're building a new studio. Hangar 13 is the newest development studio which we created. This is our first game. So we actually have a lot of people who did work on Mafia 2 coming in. So that's a really good culture. We're still working with 2K Czech, who are doing cutscenes, art, programming, and that. And then we've been able to bring just a lot of veterans in there. So there's a contingent from LucasArts. There's people who worked on Tomb Raider, people who worked Dead Space, and so on. So it's been cool to actually get all of that talent together and kind of bond or like gather around this common theme of actually trying to make a really good Mafia game, making it our own, but always as fans of what Mafia really is, and continue that tradition.
And just to go back to the map, when we saw the map, there appeared to be literally tons of activities that players can indulge in while they play Mafia 3. Could you tell us a little bit about some of those activities?
Yeah, it's all a representation. So, and even what we showed in the map today wasn't everything. Like, if you were to wiretap the entire city, and if you want to find collectibles, you want to find Playboy magazines and that kind of stuff, you could do that. That's going to add additional icons. But everything we saw today is pretty much a representation of how the Mafia activities bleed all the way to the ground level, and small-time criminals are doing the kind of work and generating the kind of money that slowly trickles up to Sal Marcano. So there's going to be mafia enforcers, and they might be pimps, they might be foremen at the local construction, people who keep people in line, who probably generate a lot of money by doing this, and they're kicking up directly to whoever's running the district. So those would be assassination targets. I want to go after those guys because they are actually, they're really valuable assets to the crime operation. There might be informants, people who just know too much, and if you're going in there and you manage to isolate them, you get another high target or another high value either a mission out of it or a way to rob money that belongs to that racket. There are ways to do that while driving like a madman. So, throwing somebody into the car and scaring the out of them to, it's a mature game. Might just say it that way, where, scare them to get that information out of them. We have bagmen. There are various ways in which you can, just destroy various goods of contraband. And as you're in Frenchwood, for example, you're dealing in prostitution. There might be bigger events that are actually put on by those guys. So there's like a sex orgy that Lou Marcano actually puts on, and you get to go in there, you get to disrupt it. You can either actually go in there and disrupt it, or you can just steal the money quietly and go back out and let people have their fun.
So really, what you're saying as well, that choice is huge within the game.
Yeah, we don't have an opinion on exactly how you want to go about it. We want to have this crime ecology on the ground. We're going to give you all of the support you need to make those choices. But this is where every player story is unique, right? You get to do it whichever way you want.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today. Obviously, myself, Steve, and Matt from E3. Hey, we'll catch you again soon. Cheers.